The hard work in upgrading a layout like this is putting all the wires together underneath. Here's our challenges.
Newsflash, David and the McKinley team will be at the Abingdon Model Railway Show, codenamed AbRail, on the 1st and the 2nd of March. The show takes place at the Abingdon and Whitney College, postcode OX14 1GG. They will be bringing 3 demo layouts, that's the RFID layout, a train controller layout and an iTrain layout. They would love for you to come along, have a chat on how this technology works. Back to David.
Welcome back to McKinley. So this is the second video in what we've been hidden away doing for a year. The first one was about above the board, the beautiful changes, well, the restoration of this beautiful layout. In a miniature way, it was almost like the sort of Notre Dame disaster, in the sense of you just can't imagine the carnage that happens when you have to upgrade a railway. But the real challenge we faced was actually what goes underneath the boards. The first thing, if you remember, is we had the debacle with the tortoise point motors. Across the whole of McKinley, we have about 445 points. The motors work fine, but the lever arms that control on our railway, the blade, the frog polarity, and also give feedback to our system, those are prone to failure over time. And we went on a systematic upgrade. In the existing room, there were 192 of them, so out they all came. We also took the chance to take away the big underground display panel, which was above London, where Battersea Power Station picture is now. And that had a loom the size of almost my arm of cables coming out of it and distributing all around the layout. We found much better ways. In fact, Lawrence Barker from CML, that Fraser now has those hardware boards, came up with his ideas, I think, because he could see the amount of mess we were making in terms of the wire, the tonnage of wire put in. And his DTM 16s, which became the DTM 32s, have obviated those problems of repeating information across the layout about occupancy. But that board came down, the wiring came out, we did the structural upgrades under London, and then we did some minor track upgrades in the relevant stations. There are about 5 or 6 localised areas. But the real problem we had, besides the tortoises, was the installation of the RFID. There are about 150 RFID sensors. So those are the devices we put in above the track between the rails to monitor movements of wagons. They were designed to fit between the rails, but what we failed to take into account was that if you've already pre-ballasted a track, by the time you gouge out the ballasting and all the other stuff, and you coat these PCBs in some kind of plastic to protect them, you need to go down slightly further. So gouging out all the sleepers and then putting the uncouplers. There are about 40 plus electromagnetic uncouplers we've installed, which we use with these buttons in Manchester, Birmingham and London. There was a ton of work to be done under layout. And so all that wiring, the additional wiring, the removal of the existing wiring, some of the structural stuff with the layout realignment under London, produced a ton of work. While we were at it, we were using these fluorescent, sort of like the bathroom fluorescent tubes that used to exist. And one of the bulbs appeared to have failed, replaced the bulb, it didn't fix, so the fitting had gone. So I spoke to my son, who's an electrician, and said, "Can you get me a replacement fitting?" "I can't, Dad." "What do you mean?" It's obsolete. They don't make fluorescent fittings anymore. You can still buy the tubes, but that market's gone. You've got to go to LEDs. Oh my goodness. And so each of these things, like the tortoises, it's something where you sort of pull at a thread and then you find you've basically got to replace the whole of the underground lighting. And if you're going to do it, why don't you do it properly so you can see what happens on the layout? So that's what we've done. And we put a ton of that in. The downside of LED lighting is it's nowhere near as bright as fluorescent. The other downside of LED lighting is that the LEDs themselves are, in their microscopic level, are individually super bright. So if you don't put some kind of diffuser in front of them, your eyes are constantly blinded by blue dots every time you're looking under the railway. So we spent an age putting underground lighting, LED versions, around this existing layout to match what we've done on the extension and upgraded so we don't have a fluorescent under the track at all. So let's go and have a look at that now.
So here we are under the layout. It's actually quite a respectable section, so I'm happy to show it off. You can see up here there's these aluminium strips and they've got the LED lighting. I don't know if you can see the reflection of it on my hands here. This is overly lit at the moment because we put these underground things. There's another one here that lights up the track over there, and there's another one down the far end there. And if I'm to turn these things off now without any assistance here and turn this one over as well, so now you've got the ambient lighting that you have underneath this area here. If I drop these two boards down and you were to look up a little bit, you can at least see how much light we've got to work with, which isn't a great deal, but it's very even and it helps us to identify things. We also have put additional lighting in along the track lines at the front as well. So maybe now we can go outside from underneath here and show you where that is located.
If I lower the board here at Swinton Loops, you can see the diffused LED lighting, and you can also see a pair of re-railers which we've installed here. Clearly we don't need the lighting here before we take this out, but if this is all secured up here and it's hidden away, the LED lighting helps the cameras be able to see that trains have gone up there, and the re-railers are there for the obvious purpose. The other thing that's worth noting is we also upgraded all the mains electrics that were under this layout. Darren had often pointed out to me that a lot of it didn't look particularly safe, so in came the trusty Lewis and he upgraded all the wiring. We had a lot of problems when we turned the mains power on with these emergency lighting things, which they would often burn the fuses out. We used these Maplin remotes for a while, where you can point this wireless device at these things and they would work, and then after a while they'd fail. And as you can imagine, trying to turn this railway on in some systematic fashion and not having to crawl around the layout underneath flicking switches on the main. So we then took the chance and went with this Apple HomeKit stuff. So these little plugs that get fitted in individually, and you can control these devices with an iPad. So for example, the valance lighting, which we upgraded the wiring to, we can turn it off and we can turn it on, and we can turn the LED underground lighting on and off and all the other things. So all the individual power supplies to the zones are selectively controlled using this Apple HomeKit. I'm not promoting Apple directly here, it's a great piece of technology that's made our lives a lot simpler. So the wiring, the mains wiring got cleaned up, we distributed it more evenly, we put roughly about sort of 20 or 30 of these things in, and it makes life an awful lot simpler. Excuse me a sec. So we added underground lighting. The other things that we had to do was we already had in the room here about 5 or 6 cameras that were watching the stations. Their job was to help the train controller man check out that the team, say in Manchester, had correctly put the train that was about to depart at 10 o'clock on platform 4, because the occupancy sensors were telling us that there was something in platform 3 and not 4, and he could use the camera there to point out to himself and double check that actually they had made a mistake or they hadn't or whatever. So it allowed us to be clear about what was in the stations. But it occurred to us that with all the underground sections on this railway, it would be really valuable if we could extend that camera technology and watch the trains moving about in the hidden sections as well. To that end, we've added about 8 additional cameras in here on top of the 6 that were visual, all focused on the underground sections. And so what I'd like to do now is show you trains running around the underground sections of this railway with the assistance of the LED lighting that we put in to allow us to see what's happening under the railway. We've installed these cameras all round the existing railway. both above ground and beneath. We're showing you now Charlie's video train running round the underground section of the existing layout, and I'm going to track it with the cameras that we've got installed. So let me show you here. The screen here shows our overall grid. It's not a particularly sexy one, but we've clustered them in sets of 4. There are 50 cameras in total on this railway now, and I'm going to go to Island D main, and I'm going to basically zoom in on this camera here, which shows the exit from the extension into this camera here now. If I click to this direction here, Charlie's camera is there ready. Oops, wrong way. It's always the wrong way, isn't it? And if you would like to start your camera train, Charlie, you'll see it exiting and going into, you'll see it go past the camera, the camera screen we've got here. This particular camera always wants a display in nighttime mode. I don't know why. Maybe we'll change it when we get a chance. So we're showing you Charlie's train running out from the extension on through this screen here. It's going to come into view and disappear off as it runs round. You can see it there. If I again next go to, it's going to watch this as it goes over what will become Headstone Viaduct in the hallway. So all that's about to be replaced next year. And if I then go to the next camera position under the track, you can see, I can see right up the line here. I can see into the section that's all lit up that I showed you earlier. You can see the train coming down. This is coming down the green line. It goes round here. I go to the next camera position. And you'll see it running on. And most of our trains have got trailing lights or headlights on. Therefore we can see that train as it goes all the way through. We're not trying to look for engine numbers, we're just trying to look for obstructions. So this can see all the way through to the far end. It's gone past the window now. If I go to the north end cameras under Birmingham, we can see that train coming towards us here, and it's going in this corner. There's a complicated junction here. It always seems to cause derailments. We don't know why. Well, we do, but we fix them. And then if we flip to the opposite orientation, that train's now leading us and going through there and onwards. We do need to fix the orientation of that re-railer. It's going up towards the staging yard now. You can see the LED lighting up here that gives beautiful light in these zones. Here's that train coming through here. This camera appears to be slightly out of focus, but there we go. And then it will come out into the staging yard area here now. And there we see it there. So we have things caught pretty well in most areas. So that shows you the combination we're using of the LED lighting together with the cameras to monitor the underground sections of the railway. The other final component we put in to all the areas around the railway, we keep adding these things, are these Lux Model Bow wheel cleaners. We've jokingly called them the Jiggy Jiggies. You can see this one here is absolutely pitch black and it's due for felt pad replacements. And the way they work is if I trigger, the train goes over an infrared device here, and these two things clean both active wheels like locomotive moving wheels as well as just rolling wheels, because if I trigger this, you can see my two fingers are being jigged and jagged in opposite directions now. So when I move a wagon over it like this, it's cleaning those wheels because it's acting in an abrading fashion like that. And then afterwards, just to be safe, we've used the patent McKinley re-railers here to make sure that the wagons make sure they're on track, because these things can occasionally shake something off the tracks. And so we put one in here. We always had one in on the green. We put one down in the red down here. We're putting another one now in the blue, and you can see up here how fresh those two pads are. Mr. Copley donated that to McKinley. That's very kind of him. And then we'll get another one to go on the black, so that all four main lines have a chance to clean the wagons and the locomotive wheels that go over them. In addition to the cameras which we've installed, the other thing that was patently obvious when trains did decide to come off in some of these hidden sections was getting access to them. To that end, we've enhanced the way we can get to the hidden sections on this railway in 3 or 4 areas. In Birmingham, we've got lift-up panels that allow us, so what was a great big clunky piece of baseboard, we've enhanced so it's now hinged. It sounded delightfully simple when I came up with the concept. It took 3 people a month to get it fixed and working, but it's working great now and it gives us access. And I'm sure as eggs are eggs, trains will not come off under there now. Now we've gone through all that work, they just won't. We've enhanced access behind London, and in certain areas which were always difficult to get to, we've worked out ways of sawing apart baseboard support constructs so that we can get our heads and shoulders and an arm in to the hidden sections in certain parts of the railway to come and retrieve wagons that have come off, to reduce basically the time it takes to repair a problem. And so we've done that in a number of locations. An additional point which we also wanted to have was to try and minimise the amount of derailing that occurs. It's a problem that plagues all of us, isn't it? And the real niggly bit for me is, never mind the wagons that decide to suddenly jump off halfway through after running what on this railway can be 7 or 8 miles of track, and they behave perfectly through junctions and joints and all kinds of stuff, and then they come off what appears to come off on a perfectly straight section of track. We have found that if that wagon comes off at the same place again, there's a problem with the track. People will jump immediately to say, back-to-backs, the wheels aren't right, and I'm thinking, yeah, no, it might be that, but you know what? If that wagon has stayed on and done 20-odd scale miles of track, it's run for an hour around this road without coming off, and it keeps coming off, say there, and then an hour later it comes off there, let's go look there. Because we found that we've damaged the track, maybe by putting one of these electric screwdrivers with a battery down. I always thought that code 100 track was relatively invincible, but I've discovered in retrospect that actually it's quite fragile. As much as it seems quite tough when you're holding a piece of it in your hand, it's easily damaged, and it's really hard to see small vertical aberrations in the surface of track that are just enough to allow a flange on one corner of a 4-wheel wagon to just lift up, sit on the rail, ride off and come down. And so we've gone round that process of hunting these things down. But the other bit we wanted to find was to try and get a re-railer, an inline re-railer, that would get the wagons back on track, and especially the ponies, those leading ponies of steam engines like a 9F or a Stania 260 tender engine. They snag anywhere, and whatever you do, you can put little lead weights on them and it still doesn't seem to want to make them hold down. They seem to just have a little dance of their own. We searched for a while, bought individual ones of all the different manufacturers' re-railers, and none of them particularly worked. None of them would get that leading pony fault off. So we then experimented with the Atlas re-railers. There's a code 100 Atlas re-railer, which we then enhanced, and I'll show you one in a moment, where we put effectively like guides, triangular guides up on the outside, so that it really does force the wheels in. And we've also had to infill on these things. I don't know why they do it, but when they make these models, they actually have slots on the outside of the rails. So if the flange is already off, it's never going to get back on the track. So we've infilled those slots and put great big sort of triangular, almost like those things they have in bowling alleys for kids to make sure the ball gets to the end, the big balloon things. So we've built those, and we've probably installed around about 30 or 40 of those around the railway to get things to come back on the track, so that if it's entering a hidden section and there was a derailment prior, it's re-railed prior to getting in there, and there's a good chance it's going to come out okay at the other end. So we're going to have a dedicated video about making those, but let me just quickly show you the hidden sections and the re-railers on this railway now. In Birmingham, we used to have these massive 8-foot long sections of board with the back seam that we could lift out, but then where do you put them? And it became a nightmare. So we devised this thing, and Andy developed this stuff here where if you take off the two covers that hide the hinges and then use the lorry, we basically have got a fitting now that allows us to lift up the baseboard here, leaves it in situ, and then we can get access to all the hidden sections, the 6 tracks that are down here. It's worth also quickly pointing out that we have the LED lighting here. We've flooded the underground sections of the railway with these re-railers to cut out as much of the derailing as possible. There's one additional item which we've also used, which we might make a specific video if there's demand for it, for the cleaner trains that we run around the railway. We've built 2 so far. We might add another 2 or 3 of these, and we've taken the Dapol cleaner train and close coupled it with an American locomotive. There's a chip in both. They're electrically wired together, and that allows us to keep the railway, the dust off the railway, because there's a hoover in the Dapol wagon, and we use it's an abrasive track cleaning block, but we've cut it down, we've lead weighted it, and it just simply adds or acts as a wiper. There's no direct force, but it does keep all the loose material off the track surface. Let me show you one over here. Here we have the trusty Dapol cleaner wagon. We've used an American locomotive here. We've stripped all the railings and everything off it, so it's just robust, nothing can come off of it. And to the outside, to all intents and purposes, there's nothing uniquely looking about this. We've added an electro coupling between the locomotive and the cleaner wagon, so that the pickups from here and here and here and here apply across both models. This is individually chipped from this, so we can control the hoover on this train as well as the locomotive speed here. Having turned it over, you can see the modifications we've made. We're relying on the Dapol vacuum cleaner here. You can see the electro coupling between the wagons here and here, and we've created a box here which we insert this track cleaner. We've moulded it, we've added a piece of lead weight to it, and it sits in there. And the train goes in that direction, it goes to the left. So the wiper goes over the track first, there's a hoover to clean up behind it, and the engine's there to give it some direction and push. Well, it's the only form of power. And these 2 things are sent round the layout. Our biggest problem for this is ballast or bits of material clogging up in the vacuum component, but it works really well. And we just rely on this now for keeping the railway pretty clean. And if I'm to do that, you can see there's not an awful lot of dirt, and we're running trains quite intensively on here. It's not bad at all. Sometimes it's troublesome and we have to get the real abrasive out, but it's maybe once a year. So if it's used regularly, it works well for us. So now you have some feel for why we haven't been in a position to update you for the last 12 months. Once again, I'm sorry about that, but you can see we have made an awful lot of progress. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you soon.